everybody, happy Friday. Today we're going to look at another game. One of my favorite Sega Genesis titles. And no, it is not a Sonic game or a Golden Axe game. We're going to look at an entry in a series where the other entries were made famous on the NES and the SNES. We're looking at Castlevania Bloodlines. Now the question is it a good entry in the series? Sit back and enjoy while I roll the footage and talk about the game to see if it is worthy of the name Castlevania. Castlevania Bloodlines is unquestionably one of the more unique entries in the series. It wasn't on a Nintendo system, and it takes place in the early 20th century rather than the traditional 17th century. And you don't play as a Belmont, although one of the characters is a descendant of the Belmont family. The game was developed and published by Konami and was released in 1994 for the Sega Genesis. Interestingly enough, the game went through some graphics and animation changes in other regions in the world. Like the character Eric Lacard appeared more feminine in the Japanese release, but the North American version had a graphic makeover where Eric Lacard looks more masculine. Then the PAL regions, which include Europe and Australia, reverted Lacard to his original feminine design. There was also some censorship issues in the PAL regions. First off, the game was renamed from Castlevania Bloodlines to Castlevania The New Generation. They removed the blood pool on the title screen and replaced it with water in the PAL region versions. I can understand that, but removing the Bloodlines title was kind of unnecessary and over-censoring. Also, in the PAL regions, they removed the pink skin off the zombies and replaced it with green to make it less gruesome. Why Sega paid so much attention to censoring is beyond me. Yet they had no problem allowing the first Mortal Kombat game to have blood provided a code is entered, which kids can easily get their hands on. The death animation for Eric Lacard was also removed for the PAL regions. Why? Well, take a look for yourself. Ooh, wow. This is definitely worthy of the subtitle Bloodlines. Jeez, this game's violent. So if you lived in Europe and Australia, not only were you playing the Mega Drive instead of the Genesis, although it's just a title change, you had the short end of the deal when it came to Castlevania Bloodlines. But these censorship issues doesn't really affect the game at all. The blood really doesn't add anything to that atmosphere of the game. I mean, Super Castlevania 4 and Demon's Crest for the Super Nintendo scared me more, and they had no blood at all. That's all I had to say about the censorship issues. So let's talk about the game. In this game, you play as the whip-wielding John Morris, son of Dracula novel's protagonist Quincy Morris, who was descended from the Belmont family. You can also play as the axe-wielding Eric Lacard, who is arguably more fun to play as, and easier to play as in my opinion. But each character has a certain set of skills that can be used to reach certain areas of a few levels that the other character cannot reach. For example, Eric Lacard has a very high jump, but he cannot cross huge gaps, unlike John Morris, who can cross huge gaps by swinging his whip from the ceiling and crossing them. These differences will be more notable in the Leaning Tower of Pisa level. But in my honest opinion, for your first playthrough, don't pick John Morris. Unlike Eric Lacard's axe, John Morris's whip is not multi-directional, even though 2 years before, we got Super Castlevania 4, developed by the same company, which had Simon Belmont with a multi-directional whip, and he came 300 years before John Morris. I guess Konami created John Morris with the NES Castlevania trilogy purists in mind, because believe it or not, there are people who do not like the easier to use whip on Super Castlevania 4. Eric Lacard has a very high jump used by holding the down button and then pressing the B button when he's flashing on the Sega Genesis controller. John Morris's whip can latch onto the ceiling by pressing the jump button and then holding the up and right button, or up and left depending on which direction you want to swing. But by swinging with the whip from the ceiling, you can cross huge gaps that are on the floor. Even control-wise, Eric Lockhart is much easier to use, but if you want a very hard experience, if you find the game is too easy, then use John Morris and set the difficulty to normal. One of the more unique aspects of this Castlevania entry is the arcade-esque setting. The whole game is set up with a certain amount of lives and 2 to 3 continues depending on whether you choose easy or normal difficulty. But after you lose all the continues, game over. You'll have to restart the game. Since the Sega Genesis is known for replicating the arcade experience perfectly, making Castlevania Bloodlines, even though it wasn't an arcade game, but making it feel like an arcade game, adds to the fun and thrill of it overall. There is a password system, but the passwords you get include the lives and continues you left off with. So if you're on the Munitions factory with 1 life left and use that password to start at the beginning of that level, you might as well restart the game because, I'm sorry, unless you're really skilled, you cannot get past that level with 1 life. The gameplay is similar to Castlevania 4 and the classic NES Castlevania trilogy depending on what character you play as. The enemy waves are relentless, but now you have a fair chance against them if you pick Eric Lockhart. There is still the annoying knockback, but the multiple directions can now prevent that more easily with enemies like Medusa heads coming at you, unless you choose John Morris. As Morris, you'll be getting the annoying knockback more frequently. The level design is spacious compared to other titles, but is quite excellent for the most part. The first half of the first level pays homage to the first Castlevania's first level, but things don't add up. That exact castle from the first Castlevania collapsed. Minor nitpicks aside, but the other levels are great too. I really like Athens, Greece, and Pisa, Italy. These levels are gimmicky, but gimmicky in a fun way that gives its own identity. The German munitions factory was fun but relentless with the grenade-wielding skeletons and the clockwork boss at the end of the level. There are a total of 6 levels in the game, but they're quite long, so you get your money's worth even if you paid $40 for a used copy. The music is well done, with my favorite track being the one from Athens, Greece. It was composed by Michiru Yamane, I apologize if I mispronounced that, who later composed the music for the fan-favorite Castlevania Symphony of the Night and later handheld Castlevania games, as well as other notable classics like Contra Hardcore and the Sparkster Rocket Knight games for the Sega Genesis. The controls are well implemented for a 3-button controller. Press A to attack, B to jump, and C to use your secondary weapon like Holy Water and Metal Boomerangs. It's not as good as Super Castlevania 4's controls, but it's much more comfortable than the 2-button NES controller. As for its place in the series, it's easily in my top 5 favorite Castlevania games. It's not as bloody as the title makes it out to be. Even Eric Lockhart's death animation isn't that bloody, but it's still a classic, not just for the Castlevania series, but definitely one of the best reasons to buy a Sega Genesis. Overall, I would give it a 93 out of 100. While it's not as good as Super Castlevania 4 released for the Super Nintendo a few years before, it's a lot of fun and quite fast-paced. It definitely has near infinite replayability, and if you're a collector, you may have to pay a bit for a copy, but it's worth it. But why not just get it for the Wii U eShop? It's only around $8 and won't require you to use passwords as much. Give this game a try even if you're not a die-hard Castlevania fan. Who knows, it might even get you into the series. Thank you so much for watching my review today. I can see why many people consider Castlevania Bloodlines to not only be one of the best Sega Genesis games, but one of the best Castlevania games ever. While I don't think it's good as Symphony of the Night or Super Castlevania 4, it's a really fun game and easily in my top 5 favorite Castlevania games. Heck, it's even on my top 5 favorite Sega Genesis games. Again, thank you all so much for watching this video. Now, am I going to stop there? No, we're only just beginning, because this review is commencing my Castlevania marathon.
Now, I'm not going to do the NES games because, well, every internet reviewer already did those, and, well, of course everybody did Symphony of the Night, but it's well worth looking at, and I have a different opinion than most Castlevania fans about what the series' best game is. So, be sure to check out next week's episodes because I am going to be doing Castlevania Symphony of the Night next, and see if it's worthy of being called the best in the series. And after that, I'm going to take out another famous entry in the series. Now for this marathon, I am not going to be doing Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Well, because the Wii version wasn't translated from Japanese to English, and well, I don't have a PSP anymore, and I don't even have a way to capture PSP footage. So therefore, this marathon is not going to have Rondo of Blood. And I don't think I'll be looking at Dracula X either because, well, everybody reviewed that and called that the redheaded stepchild of the franchise. So be sure to tune into next week's episodes and well, happy October, everybody. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. And for others, be sure to like and share this video if you can. You don't have to, but I would appreciate it to grow my audience a bit. See you all next week, and remember to stay awesome!